Once upon a time, in a prosperous kingdom, there was a wealthy merchant who was known for his honesty and intelligence. He had a young son, Rohan, who was about 10 years old. Rohan was a quiet and observant boy, always curious about the world but never speaking much. One day, the king of the land, a wise and just ruler, visited the marketplace disguised as a common man. He loved talking to the people and learning from them. While walking through the busy streets, he noticed Rohan sitting by his father's shop, watching the market with keen eyes. The king, intrigued by the boy's silence, walked up to him and said, "Young boy, let me ask you something. Tell me, which is more valuable, diamonds or water?" Rohan looked up at the man, not recognizing him as the king, and replied, "Water is more valuable." The king was surprised. He laughed and said, "That's an unusual answer. Everyone in the world knows that diamonds are rare and precious, while water is everywhere. Why do you say water is more valuable?" But Rohan simply smiled and did not respond. The next day, the king returned to the marketplace and saw Rohan again. He asked the same question, "Which is more valuable, diamonds or water?" Once again, Rohan answered, "Water is more valuable." The king laughed again and walked away. This continued for several days. Every morning, the king would find Rohan and ask the same question. And every morning, Rohan would give the same answer, "Water is more valuable." After a week of this, the king finally returned to his palace and called his ministers for a discussion. "There is a merchant's son in the market who claims that water is more valuable than diamonds," the king said. "What do you all think?" The ministers laughed. "Your Majesty, that is a foolish thing to say. Diamonds are rare, expensive, and sought after by kings and nobles. Water is common and cheap. Surely, the boy is just being playful." The king's chief minister, who was also a close friend of the merchant, felt embarrassed. He could not believe that his friend's son would say something so ridiculous in front of the king. That evening, the chief minister visited the merchant's house. After some conversation, he turned to Rohan and said, "My son, I have heard that you tell the king every day that water is more valuable than diamonds. Do you truly believe this?" Rohan simply nodded. The minister frowned. "But why? Diamonds are used in crowns, jewelry, and trade. They can buy kingdoms. Water is just water. What makes you think it is more valuable?" Rohan smiled and said, "Father, imagine you are lost in a desert, and you have no water to drink. You are thirsty, weak, and desperate. Suddenly, you find a traveler who has water. He offers you a drink but says he will only give it to you in exchange for all the diamonds you own. What would you do?" The minister thought for a moment. "I would give him the diamonds and take the water, of course." Rohan nodded. "That's why water is more valuable. A man can live without diamonds, but he cannot live without water. We only think diamonds are valuable because we don't need them to survive. But if we ever find ourselves in a situation where life depends on water, all the diamonds in the world would mean nothing." The minister was stunned. He realized that the boy had understood something that even wise men sometimes forget. The true value of things is not in their price but in their necessity. The next day, the minister went to the court and told the king about his conversation with Rohan. The king was deeply impressed. "I tested the boy for days, thinking he was just being playful," the king said, "but he has taught me an important lesson. We often chase after wealth, forgetting that the simplest things in life, like water, air, and health, are the most precious." From that day on, whenever the king spoke to his advisors, he often quoted Rohan's words. He even invited the boy to the palace to discuss matters of wisdom and philosophy. The lesson: in life, people often chase after things that look valuable but forget the true necessities. Diamonds may shine, but water gives life. Sometimes, the simplest truths are the most powerful, and wisdom is not about knowing what is expensive. It's about understanding what is truly important. So if people laugh at you for thinking differently, don't be discouraged. Many of the greatest minds in history were once called foolish. If you believe in something, stand by it. If you like this story, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with more inspiring stories soon. Until then, stay wise, stay humble, and keep learning.